Welcome back to the 8th concession. My name is Natalie. It's October already, and it's still nice and mild here on the 8th concession. We're in Zone 5B, Southern Ontario, and I just thought we could do one final garden tour. I still haven't taken everything out of my garden on purpose. I'm kind of holding off until I get those frost warnings, and some years we've had frost warnings by this point already, but this year it's holding off. It's still sunny and warm. Overnight temperatures are going down to about 11 or 12, which isn't bad. I think next week we're going down to 6 or 8 as we get close to that 0, that freezing mark. That's where I'm going to have to start pulling the last in the garden. But for now, I'm holding off, going to see what Mother Nature does. Why don't we have a look around to see how the garden is finishing up for the year? We'll start in the orchard, which looks lovely. Now I think the trees have mostly done well for this year. I've got some good growth on the pear tree. I'm kind of hoping maybe in a year I might finally get some pears. I did have a good crop. This is the sour cherry. There were a good crop of cherries on it, but the birds got to them before I got them netted. So for myself, for next year, I have to remember to net them earlier. The same goes for the sweet cherry. There seemed to be a decent amount on there, but the birds got them. My peach tree here at the front, you saw me harvest the peaches the last couple of years. I've had wonderful crops off it. I have tried to prune it a bit because I don't like how these branches hang over, because once they're full of fruit, they really get low and I have to prop them up. So I think in the spring, I'll do a little pruning to that. I hope I don't affect the crop too much. Down at the end here are my 2 apple trees. This is a Macintosh, and I had to replace it last year because the original apple tree I had there, it was called a Macoun. It was like a Macintosh cross. It died on me. So this is only a year old, so there are no apples there. This is another apple tree. It's called a Gallerina. My favorite eating apple is the Gala. And this is a Gala cross. So no apples this past year, although there were a couple of flowers, so that's encouraging. I'm hoping for an apple harvest next year. And this is the old apple tree that was here when we bought the property. I don't know what variety they are. We use them for cider and to feed the chickens. But this year there weren't that many, so I'm hoping it does better next year. This is what I find astounding for us here in Zone 5B, Southern Ontario, October, and I still have raspberries growing, ripening, and we're enjoying the last of the berries. I can't believe that we're still getting some. Oh, see, this one looks so good, I'm going to have to pick it. Here is my perennial sweet pea. It looks a little bit like Cousin It, but yeah, it just got a little out of control. I think I need to prune it back a little bit next year. But I do, oh, see, yeah, there's grass growing up in between, I think. I think that's the problem. But I do love the flowers. They look like little orchids to me. And most years in July, August, this is just covered with pink and purple blooms. It's really quite pretty. It's gonna have to get some more attention from me next year. Down here are the blackberries. Now, those of you who watched the video where we were putting in these posts to hold up some wire, you may notice there's only 2 strands here, but we've left enough room. I think at least for the blackberries, we're going to put up a 3rd strand because these get really quite tall. If it wasn't for our slug hut, they'd really be falling over. The barn, what we call the slug hut, is really holding them up on that side. We had a great crop of blackberries this year, but you can see It's October and we still have more blackberries to come. Oh, there's some back there too. There's actually some ripe ones I can pick. Looks like we're having raspberry and blackberries with maybe some vanilla ice cream and pound cake. Down here beyond the blackberries is my double pink chiffon rose of Sharon. And it is still blooming and just looking so lovely down here. When I sit on the patio, I look down over here and can see the beautiful pink blooms. Now this tangled mess is the garden behind the red door, the red room, the red door where my gardening supplies are kept. And this was sort of a catch-all for the extra tomatoes that I had. It's supposed to be an herb garden and there are some herbs in there, but this one didn't get the attention it deserved this year. I am going to pull these tomato plants shortly. I just can't bear to throw out a plant that has struggled to grow from seed. And so I stuck the extras over here. I also have another little project going here. These two pots, which I have planted in the ground for the winter, are actually cuttings from weeping willows. Now this one is like a straight weeping willow that I got from a friend's house, and this one is from a curly weeping willow that I have growing over by the pond, and I decided, oh, it would be great to have another one. So I put them in water for most of the summer until they rooted, and now I've planted them in soil, and I have them in the ground, just like I put in the asparagus and the trees in the garden bed, so that the freezing temperatures of the winter can't get at and freeze the roots from the side of these flimsy pots. I plant them in the ground so they have the protection of all the ground around them, and they seem to survive the winter a lot better. Behind them is a lily, it's like a wild lily, a wood lily, very similar to the tiger lilies we have around here. It also looks kind of messy. I really can't wait to clean up this bed. And behind that we have all the tomatoes, which in October are still giving us fresh tomatoes. I think a couple of them might have been Matt's wild cherry tomatoes because they're heading out across the lawn. But look what we still have to harvest, even though it's messy. Some 4 o'clocks there, and what's left of my coneflowers. The zinnias are still so beautiful and bringing such color to the garden. And, you know, they're still being visited by the bees. So over here, I cleared out the plum tomatoes from this bed. You can see there's a marigold back there. But this is all one plant of Matt's wild cherry tomato. Just using the trellis, but also trying to make a run for it out of the garden. But in October, look at all the cherry tomatoes we still have to harvest. It's so nice to still have fresh tomatoes. This was a pink zinnia, but you can see it's just about ready for me to gather the seeds. So I'm going to be gathering all the different types of zinnia seeds that I have. Here's another beautiful pink one. You can see some of the flowers are drying out here, like this one. And I will harvest the seeds. And I'll harvest these seeds. Here in this trellis between beds 3 and 4 has been the biggest surprise to me. And you can see what I'm referring to, my loofahs. Now, the loofahs were slow to start, as they usually are, but we did have a cold, damp beginning to our summer. And I thought I had 1, maybe 2 loofahs. You can see this one here. Let me see if I can get my shade so you can see it better. This one here is already starting to dry out. This one is younger. But all of a sudden there are loofahs everywhere. There's a big one down here. There's another one hiding beyond. There are a couple up here on the very top of the trellis. And I didn't even notice that the loofahs had sort of traveled across the top of the tomato cages, which is why they're still up. And there's a loofah there, and I think there's one on the other side over there as well. I think I'm going to get 6 or 8 loofahs, which makes me very happy because I love using them as sponges and scrubbers in the house. Here's another one. This one's doing well in terms of drying out. I don't know if you can see sort of in the shadows there, but it's getting those ridges starting to turn a little bit brown. So that one will be much easier to peel than if I have to harvest this type where they're still very smooth. But we'll give them as much time as we can. My birdhouse gourds, they've been this size for quite a while, but they're still very green. I was kind of hoping they would ripen and turn brownish, or at least tan colored. We'll give them, I like the loofahs, we'll give them as much time as we can to ripen. Otherwise I have to bring them in and let them finish drying inside, but I run the risk of them going moldy. So I'm going to leave them out here as long as possible, which is why these plants have not been pulled down yet. Here at the front of this bed is what remains of what were supposed to be Mountain Magic tomatoes. Now the Mountain Magic, well, this one actually here is what it's supposed to look like. They're supposed to be a cocktail size tomato. Nice and round. But you can see from this one here, I think they must have cross-pollinated with my cup of Moldova last year, which is the risk you run of collecting seeds when you plant multiple varieties in one garden. I do usually try and, oh, there's another loofah. Loofahs everywhere. I do try and keep the varieties separate, or plant one plant for seed only in a different part of our yard, over by the chickens or towards the front of the house, but I didn't with the Mountain Magic, and I didn't this year either. So I think what I'll have to do is maybe buy some fresh seed and then make sure that I do keep a seed plant somewhere else. The tomatoes are delicious. There's nothing wrong with the tomatoes. They taste great, and they're fairly prolific, although as usual they all suffered with blight, and it looks pretty sad and unkempt right now. And again, these wire cages did not hold them. However, we still were getting tomatoes. And you can see these lovely yellow flowers here. These are from the loofahs that are still making a run for it across the top of my tomato cages. And the only tomato plant here, you might think there's multiple tomato plants here, but this is just one Mountain Magic on this side of the trellis that has gone over here, down here, over here, over here. In fact, it's still setting flowers way down here. I mean, those things are wild. But they have delicious cherry tomatoes. And what's nice is they seem to ripen on one stalk pretty much all at the same time. So you can actually pick them like this, which makes them easier to harvest. You don't damage the tomatoes so much. And they are super sweet. Even though I still don't like their growing habit, I have to admit, they are a great cherry tomato. I still have some of my empty potato bags here, waiting for these gardens to actually be empty of everything so I can dump the soil for the winter. But as these beds aren't empty, I haven't dumped them yet. And this large pom-pom, oh, here's another one. I found another one. Marigold is where bees sleep overnight. Have you ever seen that? Here is one little guy. Now he's awake this morning, but just barely. He's just starting to move. Apparently bees, especially the males, oh, there's another one. He's asleep. Almost looks like he's gonna fall off. They will sleep on the flowers, and then they wake up and they've got a source of a bit of nutrition to give them a bit of energy to fly off and collect more throughout the day. Oh, here's another one. Hello, little guy. You still sleeping? It is chilly overnight, so I think it takes a while for them to warm up. But this pom-pom marigold seems to be a favorite place for them to spend the night. It just makes me very happy that it's the bees' bed. A bed for bees. This bed is not harvested because these are my peppers. And next year, I'm determined to have my peppers be larger. So I'm going to start the seeds sooner. I'm going to up pot them sooner, and because this is pretty late for peppers. And again, I'm trying to give them as much time as possible to ripen. Now, these are the Hungarian hot wax. You can use them like this, but if they get, oh, I can see some in here. When they're ripe, they turn to orange and then to red, and they're a little bit tastier. So I will pick them as soon as I get one of those frost warnings, but I would like them to ripen as much as possible. So the peppers are still here. I also have sweet peppers still here. There's some green sweet peppers, and over there over here, these are yellow sweet peppers. You can see here, I did get a few royal black. When they can be taken like this when they are black. You can also wait until they turn red, but I don't think they're going to have time for that this year. So there's a bunch of sweet peppers in here, as well as more Hungarian hot wax. They need to go out earlier next year. Now this is something that really excites me in this bed, and I also haven't pulled these because frost doesn't hurt them. These are celery roots, so they're not like the celery stalks, which I've grown before, but I didn't grow this year because I had enough in the freezer. But I haven't had luck getting my celery root to grow, and I have 2 plants of it. Now it will get sweeter with a bit of frost, but what you're looking for is this sort of ugly looking root ball here, which is absolutely delicious in soups. You can see they're both a good size, so I'm really happy that I'm getting 2. Now I'll cut them in half. I'll peel them and cut them in half and just freeze them in those chunks for soup. So that's at least 4 pots of soup. And back here are a couple of beets that when I harvested my beets, the plant was so small I didn't pick it, I didn't notice it. And now I have these two massive beets. There's another big one back there. Oh, and another little one here. So we'll enjoy those as well. Some pretty orange zinnias, and I will be collecting seeds from this plant as well. I think back down in here you can see some brown ones. That will give me some good seed. The scarlet runner beans, the leaves are still nice and green. The pods are all brown, but I collected all I need for next year already, so I'll leave these. Although I may take a couple from this side. This side did not grow as well. It only grew up to there. I think because around here was where the parsley was and it kind of took over. But the reason I want some from this particular plant is, look, they're not the usual scarlet color. They're a beautiful soft salmon color. So I'm going to take some of these pods because I really love having both colors in the garden. A nice deep pink zinnia. Again, I'll be saving those seeds. And this is the other side of the peppers. You can see some of the yellow ones are actually turning purple, which is interesting. And I have some Hungarian hot wax that are ripening. And over here some nice green bell peppers. There's 2 or 3 more on this one. They just need a little more time. I'm gonna have to get them in and growing earlier next year. Here are 2 little leeks that I thought I had harvested, but obviously I hadn't. And you know, they look better than the leeks I harvested earlier. But this is the most hilarious thing. This is my lawn of dill. Obviously, the dill seeded itself before I gathered up all the seed. Just look at it. It's like a carpet of dill. No wonder it's called dill weed. Now, this dill will not survive the winter, which is fine because I did collect a lot of seed, but it just makes me laugh. This here was a leek that went to seed, and I was trying to wait until in these little green pods at the end of what was the flower is where the seeds are. So they're not quite ready. They should be, they turn black and open when they're ready, so it needs a bit more time. You can see I've planted a little bit of lettuce under the cloche here. I have had to pull it up and try and take out all the dill. But I think there's some lettuce. Let's have a look if there's any lettuce sprouting in here. Oh, I think so. I think these little ones with the 2 leaves are my lettuce. So I'm gonna let them stay under their nice warm cloche. Some more dill that seeded itself. And then I did pick the watermelon that was on here. It's not gonna get any bigger. And while the midget melons are growing and setting flowers, I didn't get any. I'm hoping if I get my greenhouse built that will give them the warm start they need so they have enough time to grow. This is by far my favorite zinnia. Now, I grew this from seed, but it is one plant with 3 or 4 different colored flowers. I've mentioned this in a different video too because I just can't get over how beautiful it is. So this I am definitely collecting seed from. Oh. There's a little bee that woke up and is finding a little bit of food to help store it up for the winter. I'm happy that the zinnias are still there providing for the bees. Back here is empty except for the trees and the asparagus that I've planted for the winter. Again, putting the pots in the soil so that the bed around them will help keep the roots from freezing when it gets really, really cold. And then I just dig them up, pots and all, in the spring and can take them out because they won't have the roots freeze. But this really helps protect them in our cold, cold winters. And finally back here, my measly 3 stalks of corn that grew. I'm hoping if I get the final 3 beds in next year, the raised beds, there's supposed to be 1, 2, 3 here, that the corn will do better, but the weed pressure is just too intense here. So all I'm going to do is the couple of ears that did form, I'm going to cut the corn off and dehydrate it for the chickens for the winter. Isn't it amazing the beauty and the fresh produce that is still in the garden in October? Here in Southern Ontario, Zone 5B, the garden is still giving. Who knew we could have fresh peppers and fresh tomatoes, fresh leeks even if we want to pull them, and dill and parsley out of the garden. Oh, and the berries. Still have some raspberries and blackberries. It's amazing what the garden will give. Even if it's a little neglected, if you're busy, even if you don't have a lot of room and you just have a container garden, it's amazing what it can produce. Thanks for joining me on this October garden tour. Bye for now.